Welcome back to Tea Time with Jen here on Intentionally Living with the Padilla Family Homestead. This is episode 9 of Tea Time with Jen, and we are going to be talking about approaching parenting with intention. So grab your cup of tea and pull up a chair, get a cozy blanket. It's January. A lot of places have snow right now, and let's have a chit chat. Today I am drinking lavender chamomile. I think this is a good one for just about any mom out there. And this is one of my favorites. We do it at nighttime a lot. I do it if I've had too much coffee, which is the case today. I have been back and forth on kind of how I wanted to approach this video. We've had a couple weeks break between Tea Time with Jen's. We had some company. My daughter just turned 18, and so lots of things going on, and so we just took a little bit of a break. We're going to have this episode, and I think one more. There might be two more, but I think it's going to be one more. And parenting could be a touchy subject, and it can be something that is very different depending on your situation. And you have single moms, single dads, you have parents who are together, you have high conflict, separations or divorces, you have death involved, you have all kinds of different things depending on the situation. Every family unit is so different, and within those family units, every single kid is completely different. And so I think, though, that there is a pretty general and blanket way you can approach parenting no matter what the situation is. And so we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about some of my choices. And then I would love to hear from you guys in the comments, some of your, as we get through the end of this, some of your parenting advice, some of the ways you've approached parenting, what has worked for you in the past. And again, just remember, every kid is different. And so if you don't agree with something I'm doing or have done, and you are doing things different, there's no condemnation. It's just something to really spark conversation. And when we're talking about living with intention, which is what Tea Time with Jen has been about, parenting, I think, is a really important category, a really important portion of what we choose to do with intention. So the first thing I want to talk about with that, after I take a sip. So the first thing I want to talk about is priorities. When you are approaching parenting, let's say you're coming at this and you're pregnant, you've never had kids before, or you're thinking about starting a family. Or if you already have kids, or maybe you're starting over and you started to adopt. Every situation is going to be different, but you can approach right now, what are your priorities right now in this phase of your life for your kids? And that has shifted for me over the years. Before I had my daughter, my main priority was to know God, that she knows who God is and has a personal relationship with Him, to be healthy, and to be a critical thinker. Those were the top categories that I had. Did I have this ideal vision of what being a parent was going to be like? Absolutely. Did I have an idea of what our relationship would be like? Sure. I mean, we see the movies, we have experience in life and relationship with other people who have kids, and we can have our hopes and our dreams and all those things. But when it came down to it, the key for me was that she knew who God was, that she was healthy and a critical thinker. And healthy is pretty broad. It depends on people's perspective of what healthy is. And so that was my goal. And you may have different ones. Some people are going to have being a financially stable. Some people are going to be being a doctor right off the bat, right? There's going to be different things depending on what your family is and what your unit is and all of those things. And that's okay. For me, my faith is really important to me. And so that is something that I wanted to make sure I raised my daughter with, but also have it be a personal decision for her at the same time. So then I met somebody and got pregnant, and we were not married, and I went through a depression while I was pregnant with my daughter, and then afterwards had, I'm 99.9% sure, postpartum depression. And so my goals and my priorities kind of shifted while I was pregnant. Number one was health. That was priority for me. I have my sister who passed away, had cerebral palsy. So I was raised around people with all different types of disabilities and so forth. So health was not a matter of having a disability or having something wrong when she was born, something along those lines. It was, I want her to be born alive. I would like her to be as healthy as possible, have a healthy heart, healthy lungs, all of those things, have all of her fingers and toes. But that's, I think any parent wants that and hopes for that, but also just be overall healthy. And I was having a hard time walking. I was having a hard time. I was super sick, had morning sickness for 7.5 months. So my focus shifted to her health, right? And then obviously to know who God was. Those were my priorities when I was pregnant. Then the next couple of phases we're going to talk about kind of when making priorities, okay, is the first 4 years of her life, which was when I was in a relationship with her dad. And then after that, switching to being a single mom. And so around the ages of 4 to 12. And then the teenage years is going to be another one where we're going to talk about priorities. So as a toddler, the focus went back to knowing who God was, right? And making sure what I'm putting into her heart, into her mind from a young age is positive and uplifting in showing God's love. Also, I'm keeping track of my notes here, make sure I don't miss anything. Health was important, being a critical thinker, and being safe. There's something about having a toddler where my heart went to being safe. So again, those categories, being safe, being healthy, being a critical thinker, and knowing God is going to change depending on what your family unit is like, right? And what your convictions are and so forth. And so that's kind of where my focus was though. And then from there, being a single mom. From ages of 4 to 12, I was a single mom with 50-50 custody. And so we kind of switched gears from that point to survival. My goal as a mom was literally to survive. And so I wanted to provide a roof over her head, have food on the table, both of which were extremely, extremely hard for me to do. And then make sure that she felt loved, and also that she was obviously provided for. It's the roof over the head. And then know who God is. And then we also really worked on being a critical thinker and being creative. Creativity has always gone through my blood, and no matter what I do, whether it's in the kitchen or crafting or whatever, there's creativity involved. And so I really did focus on that because I think it helps with the critical thinking aspect. But when you're raising kids in two separate households with two different rules, two different family values, it's not about what mom says or what dad says, right? It is about what does God say in our household. And so really having her come around and figuring out and learning how to find out what is right and what is true and how to respond in situations, and to know who God is in that situation. But my main one for many, many years was just survival. I wish I could have had so many other things at the top of that priority list, right? All through our life, we make priority lists and we have to see what is the biggest fire. And that for me was the biggest fire for that period of time. And so making sure that we had that covered was super, super important. And then as a teenager, teenage years, I was remarried and had a whole lot of support and raised co-parenting at that point with her stepdad, my husband. And our focus went back into knowing God and really building. That was number one. It wasn't so much survival, which I believe that I blew it, and the knowing God should have been number one all the way through. But survival was so much survival that I don't think I put as much of an emphasis and a focus as I should have on that. But as a teenager, knowing God became a huge number one priority. Critical thinking really came involved in there. And then how to be independent from the world, but dependent on God. And figuring out that balance and having her learn how to kind of come into her own with that. Being a contributing member of society was really important for teenage years for me. And then that's helping her to prepare to be an adult, right? All these categories, preparing to be an adult. And then because of the state of the world the last few years, we have worked on what you might call like survivalist skills, but also just survival skills, like making sure that she really knows how to start a fire, how to source food if she needs to source food, having her be a part of gardening even if she wasn't wanted to be involved in it, and really just preparing her to be an adult and be able to live on her own. I don't want her to learn to be self-sufficient. I want her to be community sufficient, but also be a contributing member of society. That's huge for me. And then now that she's 18, my priorities are kind of the same as a teenager. I'm going to be here as a support in really helping direct her back to, well, what does the Bible say? Since she has decided as a teenager that that is what she believes, and she has a personal relationship with Christ herself. And so that is where I'm going to come back around and just keep supporting her in that, help her with her critical thinking skills, helping her learn different skills continuously, whether it's cooking or baking, learning how to do gluten-free stuff, all those things, right? Learning how to listen to her body and figure out her health. I am here to be that support system for her and that safety net, and continuing teaching anywhere where I can teach. So that really quick is kind of what I'm talking about when it comes to priorities. So I would write out wherever you are right now, what your priorities are. And then everything comes back into check with those priorities. And sometimes something is going to be priority number one, and then a few years later, it might be priority number 3 or 4, and something else has to take the lead. Health has been, I don't think I said health in the later years, has been a huge priority through the teenage years and through her younger years as well. Health has always been a priority. My view on what healthy was, though, has changed over the years. And so that is coming at parenting, intentionally checking your decisions as a parent to your priority list. And again, your priority list is going to vary from other people. And so if you have it down what your priority list is, if you are married, then being on the same page with your spouse is huge when it comes to raising your child. If you are doing it in split households, you can teach critical thinking and you can teach having love and grace and still respecting both parents, still while learning to make decisions and where the decisions, what's right and what's wrong, right? And balancing what is right and what's wrong, no matter who says it, and teaching them to figure that out. And so that was really, really big for me. So get on the same page with your priorities. Write them out. I kind of wrote down what mine were over the years so I can share that with you. And then I think a huge part of it is grace and love when it comes to parenting. And I don't mean cheesy Hallmark love. I mean, you're going to blow it as a parent because we're human. Kids are going to blow it, and they are living creatures who have different emotions than we do. And so sometimes we're going to say, I'm completely different than my brothers, as an example. So how my mom parents me and how my dad parents me is going to be completely different because I'm going to respond differently than how my brothers respond. And I've seen that in so many households all throughout the years, is learning who you are parenting, right? Figuring out what makes them tick, how the corrective actions work, what is going to motivate them to continue on and do things the right way. And so I think as a parent, it's learning your audience, and figuring that out at the same time as giving grace as you're learning, both for your child and for you. And if you decide midway through that I really don't think this is right, I want to change my mind, I'm going to decide to implement some new rules, I'm going to decide to implement less screen time, I'm going to decide to implement, do you know what? Maybe I want friends to come over to our house versus you going over to certain friends' house. There's going to be things throughout that you and your kids are not going to agree on, and you are going to switch, and giving grace for that situation, forgiving yourself if you blow it, forgiving your kids if they go wonky about it, and then also showing love. And love in that does not mean you give whatever you want. Love in that does not mean your kids are your best friends. That was something I think when my daughter finally got it as a teenager, due to a certain situation, we had a really big conversation, and I told her, I don't find my validation on whether I'm a good parent from you. You don't decide whether I'm a good parent or not. I believe personally that I answer to God, whether or not I am doing what he wants me to, raising her how he wants me to. And it doesn't matter what everybody else around me says. If this is my super strong conviction that I need to do, I need to follow through on that. And she may not agree with those rules. She may not agree with those decisions. Her dad may not agree with those decisions, but we are in two separate households. And so it's figuring out who I'm accountable to. And for me, that's God. And that may be different for you. And so you have to figure that out for you. But for me, I answer to God on how I am as a parent, how I am as a wife, how I am as a member of society. So when I really went through, I go, I love you and I want to be your friend, but my job is to be your parent. You are my job to make sure that I raise you the way I am supposed to, that I keep you safe and healthy as much as I possibly can, and to teach you the skills that I am supposed to. That is what my job is. The benefit is, the perk is, sometimes we are two peas in a pod and get along super great, and that's awesome. But there's times when we don't. And it's remembering what that priority is and remembering what my job is. My job is to love her. And sometimes loving her is telling her no. Sometimes loving her is telling her yes. Sometimes loving her is teaching her something and walking through things with her. If she felt no pain, if she felt no needs, if she felt no desire or urgency or passion for anything, I don't think she's going to be ready for adulthood if she didn't have to figure out some of those things and to move through those. Now, I have had to be on the receiving end of my own forgiveness and for asking God for forgiveness with stuff. And I have asked her for forgiveness for stuff because I'm not perfect. I am a human. And our journey has been one with all kinds of different challenges. And sometimes we'll take the wrong path and we got to reroute ourselves. And kids are sponges and they are resilient. And there is the underlying thing is to teach them the critical thinking skills for me, to teach them how to be sufficient in the world, how to do as much as you can to be a contributing member of society, to take ownership and responsibility. That doesn't mean she's going to be rich. That doesn't mean she's going to have a high paying job. In all honesty, she wants to go into ministry, which means she's probably going to be broke. And so I'm okay with that. Like, that's what she decides that she wants to do. Wherever God is leading her, it's what she's going to do. And how to teach her to be critical thinking, like, you need to, what are you going to do to have a job to support yourself? And what are you going to do to have a job to have a roof over your head and all of that? Because I do believe that God provides, but I believe that you should be moving and working towards, and He's going to guide your steps. And that you're not just sitting on the couch going, okay, I'm going to get saved here, right? Something's going to swoop in and save the day. I believe that you need to be making active steps towards that. And so that's something that we have really worked on. Another suggestion that I have is to build a support system as best as you can. In a perfect world, in my mind, it would be your spouse. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes it's going to be a parent, your parent. Sometimes it's going to be a really good friend. And build that support system who knows what your priorities are, who knows what your values are, right? And remember that you answer, and you're the ones who are making those decisions, right? And having people come alongside to help support you. And if you start to wander off track, that they're like, do you need some help? What's going on? Like, who are there to help you listen and vent and know that you still love your kid no matter what. But also realize that parenting is freaking hard. It's exhausting. I think it's one of the most sleep deprived. You're running here, running there. Makes you crazy broke. Like, there's so many things. It is so emotionally hard to be a parent. However, it's one of the best things that I've ever been. That's like one of the best titles I've ever been as mom. And but having that support system on people you can talk to who may not agree with your decisions, who may not agree with all the things that you decide to do, but also understand and love you and are willing to help support you through that. I remember back when her dad and I split up, and it was coming down to the court battles and things like that. And I never once wanted to go for full custody. And I had a lot of people who really did not understand that and did not agree with that. But it was something that I felt very, very strongly on, that he's a good dad. And there was issues with us, and it wasn't issues with him and her. And I really personally believed and felt convicted that I only should go for 50% custody, and that it's important for her, that what was best for her was to do that. And so there was a lot of people who did not get that one at all, that it wasn't even in my mind to even attempt for full custody. The other thing is that there are going to be things that you decide that you are doing with full intention that no one will ever understand, including your kiddo. And making sure that you have those strong enough convictions to follow through and do what you believe is right, and you can do it. I'm speaking from a mom's side because I am a mom. I can't speak from a guy's side. So as a mom, I think that I know that I'm willing to lay my life down for my daughter, and I want the best for her, but also I need to teach her to make those decisions and raise her in a way. One, it's my job to protect, but it's also my job to raise her to fly and to let go. In the midst of all of that, I think it's also really important to show that love and grace that I talked about. No matter if you're with the other parent or not, that person has value to your child, and to treat people with respect, even if you're not being treated with respect. And I'm saying that from a place of, I know that is extremely, extremely hard. And that was something that I had to do with intention, was to watch what I was saying, and to continue to encourage, even if if you're, no matter what the kid is, no matter what the family situation is, the kids are gonna play one parent against the other. It's gonna happen. It's just in our DNA somewhere to do that, to push the limits and see where you can go and what are the boundaries, right? What are you allowed to do? And so I think when you are married in a healthy, happy marriage and in that relationship, it's a little easier because there's easier communication. But when you're in a situation and you've gone through high conflict co-parenting courses, and you realize communication is not as easy, and you have your own personal issues with the other parent, it is hard to separate all of those and intentionally make decisions that are self-sacrificing in ways, and definitely sacrifices your pride, to do what is best for your kiddo. And in my situation, I believe that was the right decision in a lot of cases. Now, in other situations, I'm going to preface this with, sometimes it is the right decision to fight and to protect. In my case, that was not the correct decision for us. So again, it's looking at all of these topics and deciding where you need to go with that. But I think as much as you can, showing love and respect, and again, not romance love if you're not together, but showing love and respect because they are a human and they are somebody who is valuable to your child is important. Not easy, but important. Okay, so another subject that I'd like to talk about is, goes under the healthy and goes under knowing God. And that is intentionally deciding what you're inputting into your child, right? It's the TV, the games, the friendships they're cultivating. You're going to make decisions on whether kids go to school or are homeschooled or do charter school. You are going to make decisions based on, there's so many, like, when can they get a license? When are they allowed to start dating? Oh my goodness, there are so many different decisions that are going to come up. And the biggest thing is that you take any of these subcategory decisions, right? So what TV shows are they going to watch? You are going to put that up against, for me, I'm going to put that up against my priorities, and how do they fall under these priorities? How does this TV show fall under knowing who God is? How does this TV show fall under being healthy? Because you have your mental and emotional health in that as well. How does this come into being a critical thinker? And so for me, that is what I line everything up under. Again, I have not always done that perfect there. So there is going to be people who are going to say, that know me, that would say, she has not always practiced what she preaches. No, because I didn't understand how important all these things were. I didn't always realize that I needed to do it with intention. I had goals, right? but I didn't realize how hard and how important it was to go with intention. It really, like, the period of being a single mom, doing the survival portion, that was my focus. And without me even realizing it, it was falling under there, right? But now I know that towards the end of that, I really had to do that with intention. And now I can look back and I go, I intentionally also need to break survival habit, right? And leave that mindset, leave that as a parent, and go, okay, so now we can switch over and we're focusing intentionally on something else. And making those switches and has not been easy. I've had, again, tons of people who did not agree with the decisions that I made for my daughter and I. But then I had some who have come back and go, I did not understand why you made the decisions you did back then, but I also understand it now. And that may not happen in your case, but it's doing what's right because you believe it's what's right. And just there's so many books. There's so many guidebooks, but there's not the correct guidebook for every single parent and every single child, because every single one is completely different. So my goal for this video is to really go through and hopefully encourage you. We don't have to have the same religious beliefs. We don't have to have the same, we don't have to have the same views on almost any of these topics on what our priorities are, right? But I'm hopefully can encourage you to figure out what your priorities are as a parent, and then help you to look at things with intention and make decisions based on intention. You write down that priority list, and then you're going to go through and you're going to check everything to those priorities and figure out how those are going to line up for you and your child or children, and figure it out from there. And I really, really hope that that helps a little bit, because I know this can be challenging, and I know that parenting can be hard, but it also can be extremely rewarding. And I'm in that phase now where I'm learning to let go, and I actually did a whole blog post on that. I'll share in the description below. And learning to let go as a parent and changing that mindset can be very hard, and I'm in the midst of that, and really coming back and focusing on my priorities. And my priority is to help be a support system and to help her learn how to fly, help her to critically think, and help, since she knows that this is the belief that she has, and this is the path she wants to go down, help her critically think it, and help her stay on track as much as possible, and remind her and have those conversations that kind of let her figure out where she's going and what she wants to do, but help her learn how to set the priorities and bring things up under those priorities. So, okay, so let's say you want to go into ministry and you want to be some sort of a leader, right? And you believe that's where God's calling you to do. Well, right now, within your friendships, how are you responding? How are you behaving? What are the things that you can do now that are going to lead up to that? Are you creating good habits or habits that you're going to have to break? And really, really going through that. And so right now, I'm teaching my daughter how to have priorities, and they're going to be different priorities than my priorities were, and that's totally okay. And it's learning to come alongside and partner and show love, and to be able to help her in any way possible. So if you are in a season of parenting, whatever season that is, then I'm sending you hugs, and I'm sending you encouragement, and I hope that this helps in some way. Before I end, I do want to talk about those who are in the dreaming of being a parent phase, whether you have kids that are older and you're dreaming of being a parent again, or if you are haven't had kids at all and you are looking at starting parenthood for the first time. Number one, I think it's great to listen and take advice from all kinds of people, but then filter it just like we do our water and get out the toxic things and things that you don't want to have in your body, and you get to choose what goes in and out. And then implement the things that you and your spouse or whoever you are with, implement what you guys believe and what you guys want for your priorities, right? Because you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time, and there's tons of advice that's going to fall underneath your priorities and will slide right in and make your life a little bit easier. And if you're in that phase where you are trying and you are in the waiting period of finding out whether or not you get to be a parent again or be a parent at all, I just send hugs through that process. Be intentional with your mindset, be intentional with your heart, and I think it's being intentional about how you approach it depending on what the situation is. My husband and I met 6.5, almost 7 years ago, and we have never done anything to stop getting pregnant, and we have not been able to, we just haven't conceived. And so there is a line when you're in that phase, and it's hard. And it's hard with the emotions, and it's hard sometimes to balance those emotions and figure things out. But I think one of the biggest things that for us, what we were able to do is, because we're coming at it from two different areas. I have a daughter by blood who is mine, and she is, again, 18, and he doesn't have any biological children. And so we approach that with two different sets of emotions, right? And being able to come at that with empathy and understanding, but also with letting go of that, letting go of the control on that. And we really had to give that over to God and find peace and find the joy and the happiness and the contentment with where we are, and pour all of our love into my 18-year-old, and really let her know and let us know in our hearts that we are okay whichever way that goes, and finding that peace whether we do have another child or we don't have another child, that we find peace with that and contentment, and know that our joy comes from the Lord, and it doesn't always come from the fulfillment of some of the desires. So I just know that you're not alone in some of those situations, and finding a way to be thankful for where you are, cherish the times that you have currently, create the world that you absolutely love, and figure out what it is that brings joy. And your kids are going to be part of that if you have kids, and if you don't, sometimes it's going to be animals, sometimes it's going to be your spouse, whatever it is. We all have our things, but if you have kids, they are going to see you finding joy, and they are going to see you intentionally living with purpose and intentionally choosing to find joy. And that brings, sometimes you're going to have happiness and sometimes you're going to have sadness, but underneath there's a peace and a joy with that. and being able to find that they notice it. They're sponges. And if not, people around you are going to notice it. If you don't have kids and you're in this process of trying to figure out if you can have kids or can't have kids, just people around you are going to see, and you're going to live with being an example, living with love and with grace. So I think that's it, where I'm going to wrap it up for this video. I was really back and forth on a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about with this, because there's so many stories, so many things, but I think in the end that it comes down to, if you're talking about parenting with intention, it is figuring out your priorities and lining everything up underneath what those priorities and what those values are. And everything else will come from that. So I hope you guys have a great day, and then we will see you on the next Tea Time with Jen, which might be this season's finale, and go from there. So we'll talk to you guys soon.